Hi guys, my name is Jacob. I am a senior physics major, ready to graduate. I recognize a lot of you guys from like orientation and my classes back there. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm gonna have our panelists introduce themselves. Just tell us a little bit about your background and what you studied at Oglethorpe.
So my name is Mark.
Switch it over.
My name is Dr. Karina Pinal. I graduated with Oglethorpe in 2018. I majored in biology, so from that Goslin over there, not this new Goslin. And I went to UGA's vet school for 4 years, and I just graduated in May. And so now I'm completing kind of further training to become a veterinary neurologist and neurosurgeon.
Sorry guys, I'm still catching my breath from barking across campus. But so my name is Leonardo Lopez. I prefer to go by Leo, and I started Oglethorpe in 2013, so it's almost a decade. It feels like it was 2 years ago, but it's insane. I was a business major. After I graduated in 2017, I went into the financial sector, kind of just doing a bunch of different roles, whether it's sales, operations, management. I started at Clayton State a couple years ago for my MBA. I finished in the summer, so it's like a big milestone, and now I want to figure out what's next. Currently, I am married of almost 4 years with my wife in the back. She also went to Oglethorpe, so those of you that are here, there's an opportunity for you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you both for that introduction. So I have a few questions that I'm going to ask the panelists, and about halfway through, I'll open it up to the audience for you guys to ask questions as well. Just to get started, can you guys name one thing at Oglethorpe, reflecting back, one like club, organization, or course that has benefited you in your career path?
I would say less of the organization, of course, but the science department as a whole, Dr. Bobby, Dr. Schmeichel, Dr. Meyer, everyone is wonderful, and if you make them your best friends, you'll definitely succeed in life. They, as a unit, are really good about making sure that you're on track, like progressing through your career here at Oglethorpe, making sure that you're getting all your right things, and even if it's just like sitting in their office for a little bit, which I did sometimes, they're like excellent people to just like talk through stuff with. They getting their letters of recommendation for school or for anything else is definitely something that will help you. Getting to know your professors just in general will be very helpful. We have the kind of benefit of being a small school here versus like, you know, larger schools like UGA, like you don't get to know your professors one-on-one, and so you're lucky enough that they know your name and they can see you and they're like, hey, you skipped class today, but like, I still care about you. So I think it's good to have them kind of there for whatever you need. I definitely took advantage of that here.
So this is going to sound really cheesy because I heard it nonstop when I was a freshman, when I was a sophomore, when I was a junior, when I was a senior, the core. And I didn't believe it back then, but as soon as I graduated and I joined the real world and I was encountering people that had completely different backgrounds, I realized that it felt like the core. Other schools, you're kind of in a silo where you're only with science majors, you're only with business majors, theater majors. When I had my core classes, I literally had conversations, whether they were good, bad, heated conversations, with people that were studying completely different things from me. So I felt like I made me a more well-rounded person. And when I was sitting in meetings and just building out projects at work, I felt like I had some of those additional people skills because I wasn't only talking to business majors. I wasn't only hanging around science majors. And also the writing aspect. Like sometimes I would look back and think, the core makes us write so much. And I've literally gotten so much, like so many promotions and kudos and stuff just because I could read and write well, which apparently is surprising for college graduates. Oglethorpe is definitely going to make sure you can read and write when you graduate. Like, some schools don't do that.
Thank you. Kind of on the contrary of that, what's one thing that you wish you had known prior to, or I guess, what's one thing you wanted to know during your Oglethorpe career now that you've graduated? What things you wish you could have taken advantage of, whether it was a club, organization, talking to a specific professor, anything like that?
I think it's hard because there are some classes that I feel like really do help you, but I feel like I wish I could have taken more like financial classes, like classes on taxes and like just real like stuff. Like I still don't know how to do my own taxes. I still don't know how to do a bunch of things. So like doing like your, I don't know, like just financials is a lot of things that like we don't normally get as like adults further in life. And so I think it would be nice to have like a class that's required to take for all majors to like make sure you're gonna be stable in life in terms of like financial stability. But that's probably the one thing that I wish I could have had here.
So definitely for me, I would say kind of diving into the field you think you want to go into, because it might not necessarily be what you want to go into. I have a lot of friends that pursued certain majors, and you know, once they graduated and they went into that, they realized that's not really what you want to do. I had a similar situation where I was thinking about psychology. I got a job working for a psychologist, and within like 3 months, I was like, yeah, this is 100% not what I want to do. So I ended with Psych 101. After that, it was all business classes. And even then, while I was at Oglethorpe, I had a job working for T-Mobile in sales, and I really liked that. Like I felt like, you know, problem solving, selling solutions was kind of a thing that felt natural to me. So that's kind of what led me in my path after Oglethorpe. But my recommendation is 100% kind of dip your toe into your field and get like a really good sense of what your field is going to be after you graduate.
Thank you. So that kind of brings us to our next question. Do you think what you studied at Oglethorpe, whether it was your major or minors, kind of reflects into your professional field now?
100%. I was a biology major, and so I still use a lot of my science that I learned here. Comparative anatomy with Dr. Bobby, if you guys take that class, or will take that class. It's something I use every day when I do an exam on dogs or cats or whatever comes through the door. Physics, as much as I hate to say that it actually was an important class, I still use it to this day. Orgo, like you have to know drugs, you have to know biochemistry, you have to know all that stuff in my daily job. So luckily I was happy with kind of the foundation that was built here. Whenever I went to vet school, the first 3 chapters of what we were supposed to know was like, okay, well you already know that, we don't need to go over that. Luckily that was the stuff that I learned here, so I wasn't completely lost. I thankfully still use a lot of that today. My major definitely helped further my career track where I am now, so I'm very happy to say that this is a major.
I guess just to show of hands, are there any business majors in here? Okay, quite a lot. See, you guys are awesome. You guys said that. But so I think one of the challenges with being a business major is it's so vague, right? You don't really understand what you're going to do, and you kind of don't realize it until you're already in the business world. But it sets you up. So I'm a business major, and I'm in business right now. My professor described it as you know a little bit of everything. You know some accounting, you know some finance, marketing, and it's because you're kind of the person that ties all those together. And in my current role, I do a lot of cross-functional activities. So I literally have to reach out to my accounting team, the finance team, sales team, marketing on a daily basis just to make sure that the operations are running smoothly. And it's because I kind of understand enough of their roles to be able to do my own role, make sure my team can do their roles. So yes, I'm a business major, and I'm definitely in the business world.
Thank you. So the next question you guys have kind of already touched on, but as undergrad students, we hear a lot about like internships and how important they are for like our career in the future. Can you kind of give us two things, tips and tricks that you think are useful for getting started for internships, and what was your personal journey for getting to where you are now, career-wise?
So 100% everyone here should have a LinkedIn. 100% it should be set up, updated. Add all your colleagues, like anyone you meet on campus. I keep swinging the water bottle, I apologize. But add as many people. The reason because it kind of becomes a small network for you, but especially after graduation, it's a huge network. It multiplies. Every single time I get a resume, because I'm gonna interview someone, the first thing I do after looking at their resume is see if they have a LinkedIn. It tells me a quick snapshot of what they've accomplished, what skills they have, where they went to school, also whether or not they're even invested in their profile. Layoffs in the business world right now are pretty common. And in my company, I mean, I've probably seen it 3 or 4 times where on the swing, they'll literally just get rid of departments, divisions, entire companies go under. But on LinkedIn, I literally see almost like magic happen where people would say, hey, I was just laid off. And you see comments where people jump in and say, hey, well, my company's actually looking for an engineer. My company's looking for someone that has experience in marketing. And after people leave, like your coworkers that leave the company, it's a way to kind of keep in touch. I've gotten job offers and opportunities to interview for companies just from old VPs and managers that I've worked for. They'll reach out and they'll say, hey, are you still at that company? Because we have this offer over here and I'd love for you to come and interview. And outside of that, like, I don't add anyone on Facebook that I work with. I don't add anyone on Instagram, Twitter. They're social medias, but they're not professional social medias. Whereas LinkedIn is literally a living, breathing resume that sometimes works for you.
I think the people in like the biology field, medical field that I interact with, we benefited a lot from like talking to actual alumni. So like going to the events, talking to them, because you never know like who's in what business, and a lot of today is who you know. You can have a stellar resume and have a 4.0 GPA and be the most brilliant person in the world, but like you have to know people in order to get a job. There was a couple of jobs, like just random pet sitting jobs, random like dog walking jobs that I got through like talking to alumni, and that kind of got me settled, and then that led into like an animal hospital job, and that led into something else, and it was good to have like that little kind of spring of network that you have kind of here that gets you started elsewhere. And so like going to Boar's Head, going to things like this, like it's helpful. Now that there are like a bunch of clubs of kind of what you want to do, and they reach out to alumni, I think it would be helpful to be like, hey, like, what do you think I should do? Like, a lot of us don't always have the opportunity to know someone in that exact field, and so like getting kind of like a timeline, a plan, 5 years, 10 years is very important too. And so I think just chatting to people, like luckily a lot of us do things around here in this area or like in the kind of the southeast region, and so it's possible to find something that you can go to. My boyfriend also graduated from Oglethorpe, and so he actually got his job at UPS and then at Home Depot through Alumni, and so you know you can get to a lot of places who work here or who went here. So we have a good little setup here for everyone to kind of dive into. So.
Thank you. So there are, there's a good number of freshman students here, and one of the concerns, at least that I remember as a freshman, was kind of getting integrated into the Oglethorpe community. So what things did you do as a freshman, sophomore that kind of propelled you to like gain friends or make Oglethorpe feel like a community to you?
I joined a lot of like the clubs, like APO. We actually were both in that. We're actually friends. And so we were both at APO and like did service, and we met a lot of people through that. I joined a sorority. I joined a lot of like other kind of clubs, and so that bumps you into people. You get to know like everyone else on campus, and it's very helpful in making sure that you cross paths with people that you wouldn't normally cross paths, especially if you're in one major and you don't normally go into like any of the other buildings or anything like that. But it was very nice to join those. And I don't know if most of you guys live on campus, but living on campus is something that I would recommend to everyone, just because it really does put you in the little bubble, and you really get to know your closest friends that way.
Sometimes it's kind of weird thinking back to my freshman year because, like I said, it's almost a decade. Freshman year for me, so I was a commuter, and I would definitely say my freshman year, first semester, I tried to join as many clubs as I could, and obviously that did not work well, right? You miss meetings, you slowly start being absent, and I think at a certain point it's better to just leave the meeting or the club than to just be an absent seat. So as a commuter, I really had to make an emphasis to at least meet people outside of clubs. One thing that really helped me was if I would see someone that kind of looked alone or were sitting by themselves, I would go and just have a full-blown conversation with them. Sometimes it was probably me being annoying, right? But more than often, it was a friendship that kind of developed over the next 4 years. I remember meeting Laura, who was sitting in the back, winter formal, first winter formal freshman year. The day I met her, we all went as a group to winter formal. And now, like, she comes over to my house all the time, like, we'll grill. It's just like a friendship, like a lifelong friendship. So if you can't join the club, you don't have the time for that, I would definitely recommend at least Rotaract, just because that's how we became buds. But if you see someone that's just sitting around having coffee, ask if you can join them. If you see someone that looks like they're struggling with something, maybe you can help them out with something. But random conversations eventually turn into a network and friendship, and someone that you can depend on a couple years down the line.
Okay, so this is going to be the last question that I ask, and I'll open it up to the audience after. I'm just going to have you stand and ask you to project, and then I'll say it again on the mic so that everybody's able to hear. Last question that I have is, what is the most enjoyable part of your job right now?
So I guess the easy answer is I work from home. So I've been remote since like 2018. So like I don't have to deal with Atlanta traffic. I got reminded of that today, and it reminded me of how much I love being a remote worker. But I guess on a more serious note, I really enjoy the problem solving that comes with my role. So essentially what I do is I manage a team that handles digital operations for Goldman Sachs. And something breaks almost every single day. Something goes wrong, and that's just business, right? But from a customer servicing perspective, you want your customers to see as little of those breaks as possible. And when something breaks, you have to own up to it as a company, and you have to make sure you do whatever you can to get it taken care of. So for me, it feels really good when I find a problem, or a problem is brought to me, and I find a solution, or I help my team find a solution, because I know it gets implemented, and in the long run, sometimes it's like it causes new processes to be implemented or new products to be developed. So it's almost like you're leaving like little bits and pieces of your legacy, even though like the client never sees that, they definitely feel it.
I luckily am directly involved with clients' lives and pets' lives, and so I work a lot of emergencies, so I see a lot of really sad cases and I'm able to help. I also see a lot of just diarrhea, vomiting cases, and those are easy to fix. But the ones that the ones that come in sicker and I'm able to help the most and the owners are most thankful, that really makes it super rewarding for me. I very much enjoy every part of the job that I have to do, but interacting with the clients and making sure that they understand what I'm saying, giving them direction. I mean, they're looking up to me to tell them, hey, like your dog's okay, like you can do this and this. And so like the dog comes in with a bunch of bite wounds and it looks like there's no hope. I'm able to potentially close some of those wounds, make them look pretty, and he's all happy and healthy and the medications is good to go. So I've seen a lot of those, and the owners are the utmost kind of happiest clients ever. And so it gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to directly help in situations like that. Of course, there are a lot of sad things that I have to go through, but I think overall my job is very rewarding in that I literally get to see kind of from beginning to end the satisfaction of helping not only the pet but the client too. So.
Thank you guys. All right, who has questions?
Hi, Hi, I'm an undergrad. I'm a bio major, but I'm also interested in business as well. First, my question for you is, what got you interested in being a neurosurgeon neurologist for animals? Because I was interested in being a neurosurgeon for humans. And how was that journey for you? And was it harder than you anticipated at certain times? And for you, with business, how did you feel? What got you more comfortable into the field of business? Because it's so hard. And is there really a true definition of one job in the field of business?
I didn't realize I wanted to do neurology or neurosurgery. First of all, a lot of people don't realize that even I didn't. Going into vet school, there's literally a specialty for everything, just like humans. There's dermatology, there's cardiology, there's everything for dogs, and so I didn't realize how broad the field actually is. And so some of the veterinarians I know too also work at CCC, so there's quite a spectrum. And so when I got to vet school, I was like, oh man, like neurology is really cool, because a lot of what we see is like seizures or dogs that are paralyzed. And so I really enjoyed seeing kind of the surgeries help them. Dog is completely like unable to walk. You do the surgery and walking in a couple of days. And I like honestly, it was so amazing and so incredible and very like meticulous surgery, and I very much was interested in that. So it's just something that I saw and I was like, okay, I fell in love with it. But to answer your other question, which if you don't mind, remind me of the journey. Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie to you, going directly from college, directly into vet school and directly into working kind of long hours and stuff is hard, but it helps when you actually enjoy your job, I guess. There are a lot of downsides of like studying long hours and then having to go in very early at 6 a.m. and then come back home not until like 6 p.m. But it's like how much you're learning, how much you're, again, putting like smiles on people's faces, like all of that kind of gets you through the day. But like a lot of what they did here, like the homework, the constant projects, like the research papers they have to read, all of that kind of prepares you for a little bit of what you're going to see in med school or vet school, kind of day-to-day, like studying, developing good habits, time management, stuff like that. It was a lot easier than I thought, but still a difficult process.
So I guess getting comfortable with business, the point where I got comfortable with business was kind of realizing that people in general are lost, or just as lost as you are. I'm probably lost 90% of the time when I'm at work. I know my boss is probably not lost 90% of the time. My team is probably lost 90% of the time. Because that's human nature, right? Like, no one is psychic, like you can't sit there and predict everything. So that takes off a lot of that like nervousness. It just makes you more comfortable, especially in a sales role or servicing role, accounting role. There's a reason why people come to you, because they're lost. And if you're lost, you gotta find resources, or there's resources. The second portion of the question, the true definition of business, I would definitely say it all comes down to you're providing a product or a service. So if you're an accountant, you're providing a service. If you're in marketing, you're providing a service. You're never going to be in a role, or I guess in an effective role with an effective manager, where they don't give you well-defined goals. So regardless of whether you end up in one type of role or another, they're going to give you very well-defined goals that says, I need you to sell X number of boxes, or we need to improve account origination by 20%. From there, your managers are going to help you kind of break that down into additional goals. So they'll say, okay, well, in order for us to hit that, by the end of this month, I think we should be doing X, Y, Z. And then it just trickles down up until you make your own personal goals. So business, even though it sounds broad, it feels broad, it's always going to be very basic in terms of you're providing a product or a service. And if you know your goals, you break down your goals into smaller bits and pieces, it becomes way more manageable and a lot easier.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Does anybody else have a question?
I'll try to picture. This question's for Dr. Non-Giving. I'm also a bio major, and I also hope to work in vet medicine one day, or I'm still like deciding if I want to. And it's kind of like two questions. One is like, what experiences or like events did you feel kind of solidified your desire to become like a veterinarian? And also, you know, just what tips would you give to someone trying to get into vet school, as well as get through vet school?
Yeah, in terms of like tips to get into vet school, definitely, like I said a little bit earlier, is getting to know your professors very well. Again, all about who you know, and if they know you very well, and they can write you a good letter of recommendation, which stands for anything else if you want to go to grad school. If they know you well and they can write you a good letter of recommendation, that's a good solid base. It goes without being said, having good kind of grades above a 3.5 is generally kind of what they want. It varies as to kind of the other things. I think I would definitely recommend at least getting into the field, going and either volunteering at a shelter or going and getting a job at an animal hospital, making sure that you're there kind of in the nitty-gritty of it. When a dog is bleeding during surgery, do you actually definitely want to do this? Do you want to go in and save the dog, or are you going to step back and be like, hey, like, I'm not sure. And so it definitely helps when you're, like Leo said earlier, when you're in the field and can confirm, hey, I really, really like this, and this is something I want to do. Did I answer your question?
Thanks. Oh, well.
Anybody else? Yeah, other questions?
Just when it comes to like also like not coping mechanisms, but just like when actually admitted into vet school, hopefully, like, you know, how did you work through your childhood?
Yeah, this goes for med school, pharmacy school, grad school, any of that. When you're actually in there, it definitely is a different change of pace. Granted, they prepare you very well here if you're in the biology department, but it goes without saying that you have to definitely work harder. You're upping a level of school essentially, so you have to make sure that you're there. And for vet school, we're in classes from 8 to 5 most days. Then you're in what we call clinical rotations, where you're there in the hospital again from 6 to 6 or something like that. And so you have to have the mental stamina on top of the emotional stamina to be there. And so med school the same, pharmacy the same. You're going to be nose in your books for a long time, but that's kind of what you need to do. And it's like drinking out of a hose. There's so much information, you can't catch it all, but you try your best and you kind of hope that you grasp a little bit. But it definitely is a kind of mind switch where you're like, okay, like, let me get my blinders on, like, this is full gear, like, this will determine the rest of my life, essentially.
You both are successful grad school grads, and you talked a little bit about that transition. Tell me more about how it was to go from this close-knit community of OU to UGA, Go Dogs, and Clinton State, Go Lakers.
So I applied to grad school at like 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep and I was just bored. I found out that the school was really close to where we had bought our house. And I was kind of thinking it was time for the next step. It was not what I was expecting compared to Oglethorpe. Oglethorpe, you have a little bit more opportunity to kind of, I don't want to say slack off, but just do random things with people. Like you can leave a class and just say, hey, let's go down the street to a restaurant, or let's go to the movies. Just do random things, random clubs. And grad school was a lot different because one, everyone's a lot older. They're in different places in their life. And it's more professional. Like, I would go to my classes, my accounting classes, and everyone's wearing button downs. You see no one in slacks. You'll see the undergrad students wearing slacks. But the grad students, like, there's a different level of professionalism. There's a higher expectation for everything. Your assignments, it's almost like what they tell you in high school about college. Grad school is kind of the same thing. Like, no one's there to help you out. You kind of have to be a little bit more self-sufficient, self-dependent. But I loved it in the sense that it took what I learned in Oglethorpe as a business major, and it just like amplified it. So I ended up choosing my focus as supply chain management. So it's literally just inputs and outputs. But we're in the middle of a pandemic where the supply chain is disrupted. So for me, it was like I was studying the supply chain while supply chains are all around the world are disrupted. And I was studying acquisitions and mergers while I was going through an acquisition and a merger. I was studying organizational behavior and organizational development while I was having to coach my own team, my own agents on X, Y, Z. I was learning pretty much like what you can and can't do as a manager while I was having to have those difficult conversations, firing people, hiring people. So grad school was a mix of amazing stuff that you learn and helps you kind of really hone in and polish who you are as an intellectual. But it was not as fun as Oglethorpe, 100%. I miss just being able to do random stuff with everyone.
Yeah, UGA's campus is a whole different ballgame. They have buses to go to a different bus station. Like, it's insane. But luckily, the vet school community itself was pretty small. But granted, you have to adjust. Like, I remember my biggest class here was like 25 people. We're like, whoa, we're really cramped. My classes over there were full of 120 people, and you're all the way in the back of an auditorium, and it's really hard to pay attention. So I definitely had a lot of difficulty transitioning to that because I was used to literally like sitting 5 feet away from Dr. Bobby and being like, hey, like, I don't understand this, like, can you come over here? Versus like literally having to go like all the way down and talking to professors that you only see for an hour every day, and you have 14 other classes, and so you don't have the time to be like, hey, let me talk to you one-on-one. So that was definitely just a shocking thing that I had to kind of get through. But I think it was fun in a different way. The vet school was large enough that you kind of felt like you were in a mini Oglethorpe, so you got to know everyone very well in terms of your classmates and upper class and lower class. But it definitely needed to be, I don't want to say like a whole change, but it was not as fun as it was to be in class as it was here. There it's all business all the time, get your shit done and go. And here it was like, okay, well, you can, maybe turn this in a little later than you expected. Okay, you have a difficult time this week, let's push it back for another week. There's a lot more leniency here versus there. It's like these deadlines are hard. There's nothing you can do about it, and if you don't get your assignment in, you fail the class. So it was definitely shocking, but not a super horrible transition, I would say.
So, I'm a business administration major, and I have like 2 questions. The first one is, what advice would you give to someone who would like to go with the same path? And the other one is, what is something that you wish you knew before going to the real world?
So, if I were in your shoes, definitely one thing I would have done was kind of research what roles are out there, look at the requirements, and kind of preemptively prepare myself for those roles. So for example, one thing that's popular right now in the business world is Salesforce. It's a massive corporation. They have a huge building down in Buckhead. And essentially they're a CRM, client relationship manager. Just a fancy Excel, and it's a way of managing multiple operations within your business. I wish I was taking my steps towards my certifications back then, because it would have definitely set me up for a lot more when I graduated. Same thing, I have friends that started pursuing their PMP pretty early on, they started working towards it almost as soon as they graduated, just because some certifications, they're seen as super valuable, and it just kind of puts you above the rest of the people that are graduating with a BA or a BS. So for that portion of the question, 100% I would challenge you to look at what roles are out there, who's hiring, and what are they hiring for, and just look at the additional requirements on top of your education. When I look at resumes, I definitely look at education, but I also look and see if they have any of those certifications and skills. The second portion of your question, the advice. Okay, so I kind of took 2 birds with 1 stone, I guess. But 100% look at what's out there, and you might not even like everything. I have a buddy that we pretty much took almost all the same classes, and he went into marketing after we graduated, even though he wasn't necessarily a marketing major. He jumped into marketing, kind of got specialized into that. I have another friend, she was an econ major, but we still kind of took similar classes, and now she does essentially sourcing for companies, which is part of the supply chain. So, long story short, if you graduate business, you have enough of a setup to kind of pick your own path afterwards. But if you start looking now, you kind of solidify your path a little bit better.
When you were looking for jobs, how did you get past the requirements that said you needed 4 years plus experience? And does college count as 4 years or
Usually they don't count college as experience. Depending on where you look, you have to kind of read the requirements very carefully. Business jobs are a little bit different than kind of like medical jobs, but sometimes you just have to work your way up. And so if you want to do pharmacy, get a job at CVS, even if it's just a pharmacy technician, and kind of go up from there, see what they're hiring. Just continuously putting your resume and applying for jobs is kind of the way to go in terms of that route. Because business side is much different.
So I remember a couple years back, I saw a study that most jobs can be done by middle schoolers, because by the time someone's in middle school, they kind of know a lot of the basic things you need for a lot of roles. What you do in college, from the business perspective, sometimes it is seen as experience. So, for example, finance, like finance courses, a lot of companies will actually, in business world, will take your classes or your courses in finance or certain fields in lieu of experience. I've seen roles, especially recently, where they require a bachelor's or X number of years working in the field. Same thing with a master's, they'll require a master's or a bachelor's in certain numbers of years working in the field. From a personal standpoint, when I was working for, well, it was pretty much all like customer service, tech, and sales skills. When I was going to the career fairs and I was showing people my resume, a lot of the sales roles, like they would look at just the fact that I had a little bit of sales, and that was like gold to them. Like they saw the fact that I was already kind of like a little into the field, and they ran with it. My first role out of college was a sales role. I learned a lot. I thought I knew sales, but I definitely learned sales after. And all of it was just because I did some random thing when I wasn't at Oglethorpe. And when I was being interviewed, the senior vice president was asking me about my favorite classes. And I told him, I was like, well, I like energy and finance. And the finance portion really caught his attention because we had discussions about how the role I'm applying for is mostly about financing or selling financial solutions. So that took me, and I don't know, it really set me up after that.
Does anybody have a question?
My major is in business administration. What part of business do you recommend to go after graduate?
Part of this is go after graduate. So I would, it's kind of hard to give you a specific area, but I would 100% recommend picking up on some additional skills beyond the business sector. So for example, if you know any coding, if you pick up any languages, that's golden. Just because some of my promotions came from just the fact that I know a couple languages, like I'm not like a Google expert or anything like that, but I understood what some of the interviewers were talking about. So when we would sit in meetings or annual reviews, I would be in meetings with our clients or the people we actually were buying stuff from, and I would be able to understand what they were talking about, even though I had nothing to do with the business. So definitely take a class outside of business, take certifications, again back to certifications, but anything business related that involves technology, it's going to be a huge thing, or the medical field. I made a lot of money just helping doctors understand the business world. Like Karina said, you can have a doctor that's like the best surgeon, can do an open heart surgery, but when it comes to taxes or when it comes to literally setting up an LLC or something like that, they're completely lost. So early on, I had roles where my conversations with docs would literally just be like, how can I help the business grow? What can I do for your practice this month? And we just go from there. Like, I was 23 having conversations with CEOs and CFOs of multi-billion-dollar dental corporations, just because I understood a little bit about what they were doing, and I knew that they understood a lot. They understood nothing of what I knew, and it was my job to kind of help them fill in those gaps.
I have a question. What would you guys say is like your biggest regret as a Oglethorpe undergrad looking back, or as a graduate looking back?
I lived on campus for the first 2 years, and then I started commuting, and I kind of wish I would have spent another year living on campus just because it's so easy and it's just so fun. Again, like Leo said, you can do a lot of like just weird stuff with your friends, and you always have a good time. So like sometimes I wish we spent more time doing that. And like, granted, like a lot of studying being done, but still like I liked having my time with my friends, goofing off. Like it was just easier when I was on campus. And so I definitely, if you aren't, I would advocate living on campus, especially now that Brookhaven is live and popping, looks nothing like it used to when we were here. It's such a great place to live. But yeah, I think that's something that I would have tried to change if I could.
So for me, I would definitely say I kind of waited a little too long to start volunteering. So I wasn't really volunteering until like my junior, senior year. And I remember specifically that I volunteered at one thing, and somehow it turned into like 20 different things. And I can literally retrace back like a lot of things that happened just from me volunteering at one thing. That one thing changed my life so much in the sense that, so I was a DACA student for a huge portion of my life, like up until a couple years ago. And a lot of my friends were DACA. So I remember volunteering at like a speaking event. And from there I met not just like the consul of Mexico, I met like one of the top immigration attorneys in the country, like the head of the American Jewish Committee. And I met like a lot of like religious and political and business leaders, and they would just invite me for breakfast. And to me, it would feel really weird. I was like, why are they inviting like a random like 20-something-year-old kid guy to breakfast? And I would show up, and a lot of it was just random conversations about what we can do for the community, what they're doing, what they're working on. And kind of further down the line, that same consul I met helped me get my passport expedited. The lawyer ended up becoming my lawyer. Also the same lawyer for 21 Savage, so I love kind of throwing that out there. But I literally would sit there and think like, it's insane that one volunteering experience really helped me a lot down the line. So one of my regrets is the fact that I didn't do a lot more my freshman and my sophomore year. And even then, like junior and senior year, I really felt like I could have done a lot more.
Hi, I'm a business administration major. I'm a freshman, and I'm kind of excited about it. Kind of already talked about it. So what's like the thing you guys are like most proud of accomplishing? Yeah.
I'm pretty sure on this, but I am the first Mexican woman to have graduated from Oglethorpe to go to that. So I'm first gen, like none of my parents went to school, none of my parents ever went to grad school, like all of that, like that by itself was a very proud moment, and then to have graduated from a doctor, that there is no doctors at all in my family, so like that was very amazing for them and myself.
So for me, it's been really surreal because I actually visited my hometown for the first time last month in 26 years. And I saw like the house that I grew up in. I didn't grow up there actually. The house that I used to live in when I was born. I met the rest of my extended family, and I really saw like the small little area where my family comes from. And Mexico is very different from the U.S., like economically, socially, I mean even education-wise. So for me, being able to kind of go back and see where I really started, where my parents started, it really made me appreciate not just what my parents did, but like their sacrifice for bringing us here. So what I'm the most proud of is similar to Karina, like being the first one in my family, an extended family to have a college education, now grad school education. I'm the first homeowner in my family, and it just feels good. I'm not Jeff Bezos, I'm not Elon Musk, but when I went back to my birthplace and I saw where I really started, it made me feel so proud just seeing what I already had and what I built so far. And I mean, I'm not that old. I just turned 28, so. And it feels good looking back and seeing what you've done.
Thank you guys. I think that is a very appropriate place to end. I do want to give you both the chance to give some closing remarks to the students here. So if you have anything, and then one last question with your closing remarks. What do you guys do for fun? Like when you're not in your career, when you're not doing this, what do you guys do for fun?
So, biggest takeaway from this is that even as a freshman, you'll get somewhere. Like, talk to people, talk to everyone. You'll find someone, you'll find your niche, you'll find what you want to do, you'll find kind of everything in this little bubble, as long as you work for it. So, one thing is to not go to school here passively. It's very easy to kind of do that and get lost. But I think if we pull the right strings and we talk to the right people, it's very much possible to go anywhere and succeed in whatever you want to do. And so, a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of my friends that I still talk to, graduated Oglethorpe and they're still doing things, and they're still doing things in the career path that they wanted. And again, it's very much possible. You just have to put in the work, for sure. And then in terms of what I do for spend money. But I do have 2 dogs, 2 little Shiba Inus, so the Dogecoin dog, and I love them so much, and I spend a lot of time with them. So, and my boyfriend, of course, is
So 100% I would say, regardless of what you're going through or how tough it gets, just take it one step at a time, literally one day at a time, and little by little, like, you're gonna get there wherever you wanna go. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything. You just have to be able to be a pleasant person, make bonds, build things, learn things. And it'll sort itself out. If I look back at my freshman year self, I'm definitely awkward. Probably so awkward now. But, if I compare myself to my freshman year, it's like night and day in a lot of aspects. And 10 years from now, you're going to look back at yourselves, regardless of where you are or what you're doing, and it's going to be night and day. You're going to be a lot more proud of what you've accomplished, even now. The things I do for fun, because I work from home, I have to add like a little effort to kind of switch around my hobbies. So sometimes it can get a little expensive, but I purposely switch my hobbies like every couple of months. Like I've gone from building computers to 3D printing. I'll do paintball. One thing that's been kind of consistent is swimming. I love just kind of being in the water and like ignoring everything. It's like a nice little silence. And then definitely spending time with my wife. My wife, my family. I'm one of 8 siblings, so I have a huge family where, like, if I'm just feeling kind of bummed out or I just want to interact with people, I literally just call up my cousins, siblings, or something, and then my friends. Kind of build your own little community.
All right, can you guys give a round of applause to our students?